You want to grab the mic?
Sure.
And say your name again, please.
Sure. So I'm Chris Cassa. I'm an assistant professor of medicine over at the Brigham in the Division of Genetics. And I am here to, first of all, congratulate Pete on so much success so far. And I was a student of Pete's in HST in the big program with Zach and Ken. And I was graduated in HST in 2008 and finally graduated in 2009. And I had the honor of dispensing a speech to congratulate Pete for winning the Tom McMahon Mentoring Award, along with Ying and Fern, and it just brought back such nice memories to look through all this stuff and to be part of this academic family, to think about how so many people in this room have mentored me. One of the things I did was that I dug back and I went into find the first time I met Pete was when I took his class, the medical computing class. And so that was the name of my talk is all about this medical computing class. All right, thank you so much, guys. Okay. And so this title is called Medical Computing HST 950, Medical Science and Practice in the Age of Automation and the Genome. And so present and future. And I know there's another iteration of this class right now. Thank you so much. I apologize for the miscommunication. So these were sent at like 1 a.m. last night, so. But this class has impacted me in so many ways. So, shoot, it's not responding.
I think we heard the mouse was the way to go.
No, okay. The trick is that you have to keep the focus back to training.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So I dug back and I found the slides for this course. They're actually still online because they were part of OpenCourseWare. Sorry to embarrass you, Pete. I know this is a very Times New Roman 12-point font website. I looked at the LCS website at the time because that bring us to this. It was also pretty similar. It had a nicer blue background, but this is the time of the day. I didn't do, unbeknownst to me, so many people in this class would actually help me along the way, and Zach was one of the lecturers of this class and taught me and introduced me to the Human Genome Project, variation in human genetics, and things that really matter to me a lot today. And Pete taught me so many concepts, things like the Millimore, Kaplan-Meier curves, decision support questions, and really inspired me into the field of clinical genetics and clinical translational medicine. And one of the things that I got a kick out of, which is special to me, was to find out the first day that I met my thesis supervisor, Ken Mandel. It was February 20th. It was when he gave a talk in Pete's class about bioterrorism. And so I ended up having, doing most of my PhD with Ken and learned and met him in this class. So there are so many things about this that we're blessed to go through. And, just looking through Atul, Marco, Peter Park, just people that really influenced me in my career. So Pete taught me so much about not only genomic medicine, about clinical medicine and decision support, but also taught me, we had this fancy new building that came up at the same time, right? So everyone's in this data center. But the thing that I don't have any actual pictures of the couch, but in this fancy,
it didn't look that good.
No, I was going to say this is a nice view. But basically, we got this new building, but no furniture with it. And so Pete brought over this old comfy couch and a bunch of old comfy chairs. And I remember thinking, like, maybe this wasn't the worst thing in the world to have this, to like really make it feel like home right away. But I have so many memories of Pete just sitting back in his chair, putting his feet on the table, and spending time with me, and to think through problems, and to take the time to really actually engage with me, and to think about what I was struggling with, and to go through things. So this was really nice to think about, just Cecile and Fern and all the time there. And so when we gave Pete the award, Ying and Fern really had come up with a plan to do it, and really talked and reached out to HST people to find out that actually Pete had been nominated a number of times, but there was never this like collective group that had decided to just fire against the wall and get over it. And so we all wrote letters, and we were really happy. And I went back to my Gmail. Gmail's pretty dangerous. So I was able to see a quote from an anonymous graduate student. Often wearing a red sweater, Professor Szolovitz not only looks like Santa Claus, but also makes me and everyone else around him feel energized about all the fun and goodies in research. In essence, he has maximized the presence of Santa 365 days a year. So how could they not give you the award after this, right? So,
Nasty way of calling fat.
I don't think so. I think this was just, this is presence.
I did wind up with the cabbage not long afterwards.
There we go.
It's true.
So along the same lines, the same student says, there was not a single time when he did not show his unconditional understanding. He has the biggest heart, one that can hold a ship, maybe an entire ocean also. And I guess you can, the cardiologist would be happy about this, right?
Sounds like a sign of cardiomegaly.
Yeah, exactly. Then another student said he shared the experiences he had as a student. He told me about what his mind went through after arriving on campus each morning and what had helped him in the face of uncertainties in life. Genuine dedication to students, compassion, understanding, intelligence, ethics, enthusiasm, love of science, keen scientific insight, helping people define and realize their goals. And I think these are all such fitting comments. I personally have benefited so much from just knowing Pete and having his counsel and his thoughtful advice. And I made the joke during, I guess Ken's not here, so now I can't say it, but you know, during the thesis preparation process, I said that I think Pete is the only one who's really reading the thesis. He read every single page. He was on vacation and sent me comments back, and it really meant a lot to me. Then I remember Pete told me at some point along the way, I wanted to mentor an undergraduate research student, a Europe student. And he said, oh, you know, it's a lot of work, but you'll get a line on your CV, so that's kind of cool. And then I went back and I thought about all the lines on the CV. And, you know, if you flip through this website, you see there are just tons and tons of lines at times where Pete has mentored students and given them tons of advice. And I can't even fit them on the screen. There's just so many different students and lives you touched. And I just, I guess I didn't know everyone was going to do this. But Pete came to my graduation at HST and to my hooding and stuff like this, and it meant a lot to me. Then, after congratulating Pete, I'll embarrass Zach.
Yeah.
So Pete was given this award, and tons of praise were heaped on him. And now, in the praise-free zone of MIT, we said, let's get back to work. And so I'll think about just briefly what I work on, which is taking patients who come into the clinic, who actually sort of coined by the idea of what Zach coined, this incidentaloma. The idea that a patient will come in for some sort of genetic sequencing, and if we find anything at all in genes of really substantial clinical association and actionability, that we should do something about. And so we take this list of genes. There's a set called the ACMG59, which have a lot of household names in them. So like BRCA1, BRCA2, LDLR, PCSK9. And so what we do is we look at patient histories and we see whether or not there are patients that actually have conditions that are similar to the phenotypic associations associated with these diseases. And we try and figure out whether we can give advice to them about their clinical trajectories and their diagnostic probabilities. And so we're focused primarily on the set of variants in these genes where they've never been seen before. So many new variants appear in BRCA1 and BRCA2, even though they're so extensively studied. And so, for example, if we find a new variant that's never been seen in the case or in a control, what we do is we kind of try and throw the kitchen sink at it. And so what we're doing is working on methods to improve the assessment of the proteins in general. So we're trying to understand through better alignments and better understanding of spatial modeling and structural modeling of the proteins, what regions of proteins might be sensitive to variation or to mutations. We're looking in clinical records and in biobanks to actually look at actual cases of people with these types of mutations and to understand what their actual clinical trajectories are. We're looking at structural and evolutionary conservation, as well as from diagnostic histories from clinical diagnostic labs. And in the latest work that we're doing, we're actually using CRISPR therapeutics to try and knock out serial sets of these variants and trying to identify regions that are sensitive or insensitive to variation. And so with that, thank you so much, Pete, for all of your help and for all of your advice. And congratulations. So let there be another 100. So
Thank you.
Chris, who's actually doing the directed mutagenesis work with you?
Rich Sherwood, so in Brigham and Women's.
And so how did you establish that collaboration? Because I think one of the things that Pete taught us was how to collaborate in a multidisciplinary way. Because when he came to Boston, one of the things he did was collaborate with some of the leading lights on the medical end, egos notwithstanding.
Yeah, so Rich is a great collaborator. He's a professor over at Brigham in the Division of Genetics, and he works on all sorts of questions about aging and understanding both site-directed mutagenesis and untemplated CRISPR. So, for example, what are the frame shifts that you can expect if you actually target a specific variant in CRISPR? And so now we're working on this new prime DNA editing. So this thing from David Hu's lab to try and actually use a retrovirus to replace a specific base pair without actually making a double-strand break using CRISPR. So it's pretty exciting stuff. So we're using this to serially tile through the ACMG59 genes, which are cell essential. So things where they would either be hyperproliferative or hypoproliferative.
Someone take a photograph of that. How many PhDs does it take to?
Break the computer.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Well,
Does anyone
wait.
actually have a password?
No. Okay.
As we're waiting, I'm going to tell stories. We don't need
We don't
my
have a
phone.
path forward. We need help. Does anybody have the password for this? Can you get technical help? Yeah, we can retrofit it, but.
So, when I was trying to decide where to go for my PhD, I did get into Stanford, but I was talking to people at Stanford and people at MIT, notably Pete, and the other advisors were very nice. They were like normal people. We had these great conversations. And then I was talking to Pete, and I was trying to have a conversation about research with him, but I had an 8-month-old baby who is now, like 9, almost 10, and she kept crying, right? Like she was just unsettled, and so I would, use 5 words, and then baby would cry, and I'd say, "Excuse me," put the phone down, and then like pick up the baby, and then so it just took a really long time, and finally I said, "I'm really sorry. This conversation is taking a really long time. My baby is unhappy." And he said, "Well, that's okay. She's just asking for her fair share of your time, which is all of it." And I was like, I'm doing my PhD there. So while we're still waiting for slides, I will say maybe 2 other funny things about Pete. Pete was a fantastic advisor for me because he let me do mostly what I wanted. He just gave me a really emphatic nod from the front row. He let me do mostly what I wanted and always had very supportive feedback. Occasionally that feedback was something like, I just don't think this is gonna work. But he was always also very good natured when it did work later, so that's great. Are we looking for slides, guys?
So we can either have you go after lunch and do the slides, or we can just set you up with the computer.
You know what? Let me do the following. I'm going to project your slides from my thing here. Oh, no, but it's not even on Zoom.
Yeah, why don't we just do lunch?
Wait, I can do this. I can log in
We'll
as
just
me.
plug in someone else's
Oh.
computer.
Why don't I just log in as me?
Oh, yeah,
That sounds great. Yes.
Yes. Okay, how many gratitudes does it fail?
Okay, the sad thing is if all of Pete's former PhD students cannot get this unlocked, I think that's sad. Like this is not good. Oh yes.
I think
We'll be different.
My list packing skills obviously are very useful.
You think it's gonna work?
We'll find out.
Hi.
Maybe. It says hi.
We'll
It says hi.
install Zoom and all kinds of stuff. We're getting everything ready for you.
Everybody, I think we're gonna make the executive decision to have lunch now while we get this set up. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, because we have to install Zoom.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's gonna take several minutes.
It's gonna take minutes.
Oh, that doesn't require a password?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's
Let's do it after lunch, everybody. Go get some lunch, and then we'll start talks up a little bit early. Go ahead, yeah.
You're ready, bro?
Should we just restart?
Yeah, but nothing.
By the way, if I could say an anecdote.
Yes. Pete, grab a microphone.
When,
All right, all right.
On, off, on.
on, off, on.
Up.
Up, okay.
On.
So John Gutag is one of my colleagues at MIT, and he became department head in electrical engineering and computer science about a dozen years ago or so. And so he called the faculty together. At the time, there were about 110 faculty members in my department. And we met in a big lecture hall. And he walked up to the podium, plugged in his laptop, and there was nothing on the screen. And so here's an audience of 110 electrical engineering and computer science professors, all of whom think that they know how to solve whatever this problem is. And so about half of them rushed down to the podium, and John is surrounded by 50 people, all giving him, of course, contradictory advice on what to try. And after about 20 minutes, there was still nothing on the screen, and he wound up grabbing a piece of chalk and giving a talk on the blackboard about his plans for the department during his tenure. So this is a slight recap of that same phenomenon.
I think he's saying we're all good professors. Like, I think that's what I heard from that story. All right, so everybody, please grab some lunch while we figure this out. All right, you guys are gonna have to
I know, it's
I also know before.
As soon as we,
Yeah, but when you don't have any password.
do we want to make sure the answers are up?
Yeah, so that's, oh yeah.
So if anybody has a presentation from the afternoon that they have not yet uploaded to that Google Drive, please do so or see me and I will upload it for you.
Zach's what's on it's shoot on the there's like a default.
Well, so it's control L, maximize for Windows L.
It's weird that it's weird also because like when we started this years ago, they just walked right in. Yeah. So it's really hard to no, so I don't think there's So ours she was flying from
I know.
I was like, I don't know how it got changed, but oh, right. I don't think it's here.
Yeah, yeah. She's around. Came in doing natural language processing. And also
Right, exactly.
Come on.